Hi everybody, it's me, Corrie T, and that line there that I just said, it's me, Corrie T, wasn't supposed to become the thing that I said in all of the beginnings of my videos, but it seems to have happened, so it's a thing now. It's me, Corrie T, and I'm here to talk to you about manifesting. So today I wanted to tell you that years ago I did a TED Talk and I forgot about it, completely forgot that I did that. And it was something that I manifested. I really wanted to do a TED Talk. I thought one day in the future, I'm going to do a TED Talk. And I knew that I would, I really did know. But 3 months after I thought that, I got the opportunity and it happened very easily and it was all just seemingly meant to be. So anyway, that TED Talk exists online and you can watch it. I will put a link just below so that you can see it. And the reason why I brought it up is because that TED Talk is about how my perceptions changed about my anxiety that I used to have, and how that changed my experience of anxiety and basically just changed my whole life. I went from being someone who was severely anxious and someone who was going to the doctors 3 times a week sometimes, and my doctors were saying that I had generalized anxiety disorder and that I might have it for the rest of my life, and it was just the way I was. And I just didn't want to believe that. I did not want that to be my life. My TED Talk is about an unusual journey that I went on, that you will see when you watch it, to discovering a new perspective about my anxiety. So it was about learning that I could be friends with my anxiety. Becoming friends with my anxiety made me perceive it in a different way, which made me experience it in a different way. And over time, that made me feel completely differently about anxiety and about my life and how I process things. So you can watch more about that story. I'll put the link below. But the reason why I've brought it up now is because I really want to talk to you about not being afraid of your thoughts. So when I had really bad anxiety, I used to really obsess and think about things to do with my health, relationships, awful things that I thought could happen. All of these what seemed to be intrusive thoughts just constantly in my mind, and I knew that I wasn't supposed to be thinking about them, and I knew that the more I thought about them, the more likely they were to occur in my life. And I had this awareness, but these thoughts felt really, really intrusive. And what I did was, over time, I learned to not react so much to those thoughts so that I didn't panic every time I had those thoughts. This is something that we're basically learning how to do when we're consciously creating our realities. It's about seeing the thoughts there and not buying into them, not going down that road, not giving them fuel, not fanning the fire so that we end up in a kind of road of doom that leads us to nowhere but very bad feelings and feeling awful and miserable about ourselves and insecure and everything. This is the process that I went on with my anxiety, learning to see the thoughts, allow them to be there, thank them for being there, for saying, hey, I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now and I really, really want to feel secure. What can you do about it? And seeing them as something that was trying to protect me, but then me taking over, not allowing the thoughts to take over. And that's basically what we're learning to do with manifesting. So you see the old story, pops up, it says, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, they're with someone else, it's just not going to happen for you. Anything you can think of which might make you feel bad, it comes up. We've all been there. But what you do, rather than you being afraid of it, is you see it for what it is, which is just a thought. And there is no such thing as a good thought or a bad thought, right? They're all just thoughts. So when you can see it as a thought that exists in your mind, you have a choice then, and you have the power to decide how much you engage with that thought. And this is actually what it is mindfulness. And mindfulness has been scientifically proven to reduce anxiety and depression. And actually, it's just a healthy thing for us to do with our minds, to be observant of what we're thinking, right? Not to the point where we're analysing it and obsessing over it, but just to observe it. So for example, you're sitting there and you're thinking, it's just not going to happen for me, and where is it? What am I doing wrong? You know, why is this going so wrong for me? I'm having a really bad day. And you then go, whoa, I'm really, really in this story right now. I can see all these thoughts and I can feel that I really believe them. And I know that I believe them because I feel it. So then you have the choice then to just observe it. You know, those feelings are not going to hurt you. They're uncomfortable. They're really, really uncomfortable, but they're not going to hurt you, and they're going to pass. So you can see them as a passing thing, like a cloud. And so the other thing that happens is when we observe these uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, we can see them for what they are, which is part of the old story, right? And when you do that, it's like shining a light on a shadow. And what happens when you do that? The shadow disappears. And this, over time, is what happens when we start to observe the old story from a different perspective. We see it as the old story and not part of us, and therefore we disidentify with it. And that is incredibly powerful. And this is like the power that we have to be able to choose. Am I going to identify with that thought? Is that something that I want to think? Is that something that I want to happen in my future? Is it something that I want as part of my life? If it's not, then you have a choice to be able to go, there's a thought that I don't want to identify with. Therefore, that's okay. It can be there if it wants, but I'm not going to buy into it. You know, it's about how much we buy into the thoughts. That's where the anxiety comes from. So when we're buying into it and we're believing it and we're falling for it, then we feel anxious, then we feel stressed, then we feel like we're not good enough. But when you observe it and you zoom out and you see it for what it is, you can disidentify with it. And that is your power, right? And it's how, I swear to you, it is how I went from being incredibly, incredibly anxious as a person to not being incredibly anxious as a person. Yes, I still worry and I still have wobbles and things like that, like we all do because we're human, right? The goal is for you to be able to take the fear out of the thoughts. It is not for you to never have a fearful thought, or for you to never have an anxious thought, or for you to never have an anxious feeling or a sad feeling, or, you know, whatever. It's not for you to do that because you're a human and you're going to have those thoughts, right? So the goal is instead for you to be able to observe them and see them for what they are. I used to get really stressed looking at manifestation videos because I used to think when someone says, oh, well, if you're having any anxiety or doubt or fear or insecurity, then it's going to show up in your reality. I find that really stressful to listen to, and I will never be the kind of coach which has this kind of cruel to be kind method because it never worked for me. It just doesn't work for me. I find that what works for me is just compassion, you know, like having compassion for your thoughts, having compassion for the old story, having compassion that you are where you are and you are supposed to be where you are, right? So I want you to just be gentle with yourself. Those old thoughts, those stories, they are part of years worth probably of manifestations of an unconscious part of you that you're now learning to recreate. Right, that takes time. It can happen overnight, sure it can, and you can do that, and sometimes that happens for people, but it might not, and if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. You're still going to get what you want. So when you're dwelling in the old stories and you're dwelling in those thoughts for a long time, over days and days and days, that's when they manifest. If the case was that all of the things that I'd ever worried about or feared or obsessed about and dwelled in were going to come to life, then honestly, I would have died a long time ago. Like, I would have had all sorts of horrific things happen to me because the way that I was thinking before was incredibly pessimistic, incredibly anxious, incredibly fearful. If it was true that all of those things, because they were in my mind, would manifest into my life, then honestly, I just wouldn't be here, you know? And so I just want you to know that your positive thoughts are so much more powerful than your negative ones, and you can turn this around by learning to just observe the thoughts, see them for what they are. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just thoughts, okay? And it's what you do with those thoughts and how you engage in them that gives them their power or not. So what I used to do whenever I was having really anxious thoughts back in the day, like a long time ago now, and don't get me wrong, I still have anxious thoughts sometimes, but just not to the extent at all like I used to. I know that I'm a human. Predominantly, I've moved into a more secure state, a more trusting state within myself, a more confident state within myself that absolutely keep me stable and knowing that I can have whatever I want, right? But what I used to do is I used to think, okay, and by the way, this was a tough process that I went through. It was a tough process of being able to like stop engaging with those thoughts, because they're quite addictive. They're addictive. It's addictive to feel anxious and obsessive and down sometimes, because we've identified with that so much, and the ego likes to stay with what it knows, so it will do what it can to just keep you there, right? So it's almost like an addiction, like getting off these thoughts. So I found that it was quite hard for me to, you know, stop engaging in these thoughts, stop doing the things that perpetuated them, looking them up online, talking to people about them, going to forums, talking to people about these things that I was scared of. Dr. Google, I remember that was really hard to stop doing. So, you know, it took some time for me to go, right, those behaviours are perpetuating those thoughts, and I have to starve them for them to stop, you know, growing in my mind. And that's what we've got to do with the old story. That's literally what you've got to do. You've got to starve it. You've got to literally starve that old story so that it dies. And it won't die to the extent where, you know, you never have a thought like that again. But it will die to the extent where it's not part of your reality anymore, and it's not part of your experience. And what I did as well was I distracted myself. It's like now I can do this thing where I'm like, that's a really negative thought and it's not nice, and I can see that actually it's trying to help me. So thank you, anxiety, thank you, negative thoughts. I know you're trying to protect me, but that's not the road that I want to go down. I've got this. I know what I'm doing. If we have to do anything to protect ourselves, then we will, you know? It's like knowing and trusting yourself that you can get through everything and anything, and that you'll always do the right thing. You'll always look after yourself in whatever way that you need to. Right, I also just remembered that you should go and watch Katy Perry's music video for Wide Awake. I'll put it in the link below. Wide Awake, that music video is so incredibly clever, and it's about her saying goodbye to that old fearful part of herself and coming together with her inner child and going together and trusting the adult self and the child self and becoming one, right? Rather than resisting each other and fighting each other, it's about just becoming one with your inner child and your inner self and the fearful bit of you that wants to take over. It's about just trusting yourself, and it's such a powerful music video. I've always loved that. So go and watch that. It's really, really good. Anyway, I hope I've explained this well. My email is just below. And if you want to do some coaching about this kind of thing, I would love to meet you. And it's been amazing to meet so many of you. And honestly, everyone in this community is just so lovely and full of love. And I just think that this community brings together all of these amazing, beautiful, loving people. So if you're here, then that is you. So thank you for coming by, and I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.